All right. And so we were talking about stuff like the future of Satanism.
Okay, no. I asked you a question just now. What do you hope to? What are you expecting out of this today? This recording, because we make a lot of recordings together. So go ahead and answer that again.
So what I'm expecting is I kind of want a different recording because I know we talk about Satanism and all of that stuff a lot, but I'm really just interested in continuing the conversation about the future and ideas and how possibly the present could affect it.
Yeah, that's funny. You want, but this is my conversation, and it's funny how that works. You're directing my interview or my conversation, and that's part of what I want to talk to you about. That's interesting, like what you want, because you want to talk about things, and I don't mind that, but it has to do with like and I'm going to read some stuff I wrote down. Dominance and submission. I notice you. This is you, Claudia. Let's say, add your name to the zine you did with us called Burdella Bugby Soliloquies, and you put your name before mine. Or you phrase a conversation I had with you as an interview when it was more of a conversation. Or you uploaded it without asking if you could. Asking and rebelling, ask against the answer is okay. Not asking to use another's work might make waves more than you would if you could just disagree. Though I do go with the saying sorry over asking permission. Is there righteous rebellion, a righteous way to climb or to dominate that is strong versus what I perceive as passive? When I mentioned, okay, so that's just quick notes, and that might not make a lot of sense. So I'm not trying to throw you off here. Let me get back to my stream here so I can.
No, it makes sense. It seems like a question about ego, if that makes sense.
Well, it is, and it is. You know, I don't know if I have a question about ego because I understand what's happening. You know, I've been through this a bunch. It's an idea to ask you a question about, like, dominance and submission, like that kind of. Yeah, it is about ego. Yes, certainly. So I'll ask you about the perverse ego versus the other stuff, because just now we start off and you're like, you're starting to direct something that's mine. This is my project, motherfucker. I'm the motherfucker who said, hey, I want to have a conversation with you and record it. I haven't had that before. You've been the one interviewing me. And so when you phrased one thing like it was a conversation as an interview, it's phrasing it as you being the dominant I'm submissive to you. When you interview someone, it could be perceived that way. Now, I don't perceive it that way, but the general, when we communicate in this realm where we're recording stuff to broadcast to a lot of people, I communicate to the lowest common denominator. So I communicate to everyone. I don't communicate just about my perception. Okay. Because I don't necessarily perceive it like that. I perceive interviews as an exchange of intellect usually. But a lot of people, and when you're publishing it on Twitter and you say, Shane Bugby interviewed me, that is something to you're flexing. And it does become like I'm either in a submissive position or a uplifting position, but it has more to do with you than it has to do with us, which is a conversation between us, which is not a bad thing. And we are talking within the satanic concept. And of course, you know, you're going to think about yourself first. I get that, which most people do, I think, anyway.
That makes sense.
So let me hear what you know, I don't want to ramble on, but I think you understand what I'm going for. So go ahead and let me hear what you have to say about what I just said.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Maybe there is some sort of inner little bits of ego that's unconscious with that, but for the most part, a lot of that is sort of marketing, because with that, I think there was a lot of interesting things said, and I want to get the whole Satanic Almanac thing like really going. I'm really into that idea. And that whole sort of idea is included in that conversation. So it's like,
be specific. What whole idea?
Well, we were talking about the future of Satanism in that conversation, and I was talking about some really cool stuff, which I think I'm going to include in, or at least try to get included in the Satanic Almanac.
I think you mean we were talking about some really cool stuff.
Yeah, we were talking about some really cool stuff.
You see how I can fight for myself here?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So I'm just going based off my memory So I'm
and your ego and yourself. You're thinking about yourself. But a lot of time I think it's like here's the lesson here, young person. Is the idea is there's a lot of times like I'll tell people I work with people. I don't even though they work for me. Like I've worked with Peter Gilmore. I worked with Doug Mesner. I worked with Stanton LaVey. They worked for me. I worked with Anton LaVey. No, he worked for me. I can say it like that because that's a fact. Okay. But I don't. I say it in a respectful tone because especially because of who I'm dealing with. Everyone, if I say that person worked for me, it puts them in a perceptive way, in a general perception way, it puts them in a submissive position or something under me. So I don't do that because I want to continue to work with them eye to eye. And I don't look down on people that I'm working with, because if I look down on people I'm working with, they're going to have an animosity and it's going to hurt me in the end. So I'm actually I'm being a concept I've come up with like a long time ago called be more greedy. It's like, I just don't want to feed my ego in the moment and say, yeah, that bitch works for me. Lemmy from Motorhead worked for me. He did. He worked for me. I employed Lemmy. But I'm going for a bigger picture. So when I say Lemmy worked with me, it's to not upset, it's the truth. Both are the truth. He worked with me and he worked for me. I can choose to phrase it in two different ways. One is an immediate feed of my ego, and one is a larger, be more greedy concept. And, and in Chicago, that stuff's real clear. Like people cut you off real quick. Hey, motherfucker, I ain't working for you. I'm here to help you. They'll say something like that. They'll be quick. They are hyper sensitive to words of dominance. If that makes sense. But go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt if I did.
No, you make sense. And I will be completely honest. I didn't fully consider all of that sort of all that sort of thing with that.
How could you? You're young. You're very young. And I'm saying this from a mentor kind of way where it's like, I've had the same attitude you're having. It's young and it's like, it's all about me and it's cool. It's nothing wrong. If I thought something was wrong, I would say, I think that's fucked up. Okay. I don't think any of this is wrong. What I'm saying is learn from my mistakes, youngster. This might be a better way to navigate sometimes, is to be thoughtful of what you're saying to people and around them, because if you upset them or hurt their ego, you're not going to get anything else out of them. And you want to be in business with someone or friends with them for as long as possible, because you get much more out of them than a one-time, hit. You get way more out of them. So it's sort of that. I've done the same thing, and I've noticed that this is the better way to probably navigate, especially amongst satanic people and people with big egos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm taking mental notes.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I laugh about it. Like, I had a great laugh when I get that zine and it's like Berdella Bugby. I'm like, who the fuck you are putting your fucking name before mine? The fuck are you? You don't even, no one knows you because of me. What the fuck is going on here? I'll fucking chop this zine up in a million pieces. That's what I thought when I first saw it. I was sort of joking, but you have to fight. This is also an idea of, you have to fight for your place on the the king of the hill. You got to keep fighting. It's like the alpha, let's say, as the joke, the alpha always has to fight, and they get, they at some point retire because they can't fight anymore. But along my whole career, all I've had to fight for my credit. Like, hey, make sure my name's on there. Make sure my name's on there. Make sure my name's on there. Make sure it's spelled right. And that's been for 35 years. And so, that's just part of the game too. People are never going to think of, they're always like what you did. I think what you did, you're saying it here is so natural. Like, you're a natural Satanist. So it's so natural that you're like Berdella Bugby. It's so natural to put your name first, your ego, you're proud, and it's cool. It's cool. I was proud of it. The zine that you did, I thought it was cool. I'm proud of you. But that's when I just had a good laugh about it, because it's like, you hear rock stars. You know, like when I was growing up, the concept was always like, whose name goes first on the bill, being a rock concert, the bill being a hand flyer before it was digital. We had paper flyers, and they'd call them a bill. And whose name goes on the top, and they'd argue who was the oldest, who sold more records. And sometimes they do tours where the older person was the headliner, even though they weren't selling tickets. It was someone else. And sometimes it was or sometimes the older person was opening up because but it was an ego thing. And some older people would not open up for people. They were like, no, I'm big and we're always going to stay big. We're never opening for people, which is something I noticed Marilyn Manson doesn't have a problem with. And he's got this healthy ego going. Him going out on tour recently, opening for some band, Five Finger Death Punch. A lot of people in the entertainment bit could say, ooh, that's a hit. That's ouch, man. He's a headliner. He shouldn't be doing that. And a lot of management people would say that. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's bad for your career. But he did it. And that's what shows more strength. He has more strength, that confidence that they talk about this. There's a confidence there that goes, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to blow these kids away no matter where I'll open up. I'll start at 3 PM. I'm going to fucking be the best thing there, which is cool. If any of that makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
Well, think about it right now and don't tell me if you're sure about it, if it makes sense. I'm kidding. You got anything to say to this?
I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can't really speak for at the moment with exact memory, but I do try to give responsibility to the responsible. Like, I didn't want to not include your name in that.
In what?
In the zines and stuff. Like, I like to give credit where credit's due. And in the moment, maybe it might have been unconscious that I put my name first. It might have been conscious. I don't exactly know at this point in time, because I was kind of just making something, and it's kind of just when I make something, what happens.
I think it has more to do. I appreciate that it gives credit where credit's due, but I also think it has to do with, you coming up with the title of being the Shane Bugbee historian and attaching yourself to the time you've spent with me, the time you've listened to interviews and we've spent together. So it's like you're it's like a fucking dog. You're pissing on your shit. You're taking ownership of stuff. It's sort of hilarious to me. That's how I see it. And that's how it would be for me when I did, like Michael Hunt Publishing. I'm taking ownership of it. It's mine.
I guess that makes sense, though. I guess I'm less trying to take ownership, more trying to just like showcase something that I think a lot of, like, that's what the whole summer of Bugbee was like, there's a lot of things being said, but like they're evidently not true if you do the research, but I'm the only one that I've ever seen that actually has done the research. So I'm going to present this in a format that people will listen to.
And you're saying there's a lot of things being said about me.
Well, there were. Then we made that book, and since then, I think I've seen a lot less of that.
I'm just making that clear here because we're recording something that'll be broadcast. So, yeah, right, and I appreciate that. But that was something I wrote down too in my notes. It's like you. Oh fuck! Did I closed all my shit? Damn it! I should close my notes. Is that when you? Let me find my notes again. That thing about where is this note? I know it's right here. Okay, yeah, it was like when you mentioned you were the only one downloading my stuff from archive.org. What are you getting at there? And my point of that is like, it was like, do you think like you're the only person that has approached me to do interviews, or
no,
or stalks my history?
I don't think I'm the only one, because there's certainly other people, but I think I'm the only one that's really gone at it without any sort of like nuance, because I went around and I asked a ton of people. Like, I was asking like everyone from like the Satanic Temple, I was asking Church of Satan people, and it was like, you're all telling me no, but at the same time you're also calling yourselves Satanists, and I just didn't understand this whole creating a devil within like devilish circles sort of thing. So if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It does. I appreciate it. But I responded to you because whatever you were writing me, whenever it was smart. Whatever it was just smart. It came at me, was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't even see, a youngster or anything. I was like, I just saw smart.
Well, what I was asking you about was the second half of a conversation between you, Doug, and Timothy Wiley that apparently there's no actually. I've yet to find it. I've been going through all those like files you sent me. I've yet to find any part 2 to it because that's like my main goal to find right now because I'm really interested in seeing if I can find the second part of that Timothy Wiley interview.
Yeah.
But
it's probably gone, or it's on older hard drives I have, and I don't know how to I don't have the money to get them transferred. I wish you did. I wish you had funding, or someone had funding to come and take all my shit and look through it. I would be happy to give it to someone who had some funding,
Give me a bit. I'll be the one. I'm certain I'll be that person because I don't think anyone else should egotistically.
What?
Give me a bit. I'll be the one to do that. I think I should be at least egotistically.
Yeah, I agree with you. You've put a lot of time in, but it's just like, for me, it's the same thing. I couldn't hire anyone to do it. I'm just like, even, I want to get that stuff out there. I'd like to send it to you. I don't even have, I don't have enough funds to get all that stuff, it's in a storage area. And so I do hope it gets out there. And it has to have you have to have like what has to happen is you have to have like a budget, like, oh, okay, I need to rent. I need to have a computer. I need to have this much hardware, the hard drive space, memory space. I need to have this much time. I need to be able to have this money to pay people to help me with this. And you need to come up with a budget in order to do it. And then try to raise those funds somehow, which is what I'm trying to do for a video project right now, is I have to come up with a budget of time, how long it'll take me. This is how you make movies and stuff. This is how you pitch ideas for scripts for filmmakers, to get people to give you money. Like, well, it'll take me 2 weeks, this many hours. I need this many people. I need this many cameras. I need this many lights. So you need to figure every single thing out in order to ask for money. That's what people want. They want a pitch and a budget. And so you sort of, if you're looking into doing that stuff, you have to come up with that budget of time and money, and then you're able to, and then you pitch an idea, like, this is the idea, and then you're able to get grants or people that believe in the project to go, okay, I'll give you the money if you can get that, if you can get all that stuff and get this, and this is your idea. It looks good, the budget looks good, the numbers look good, the time looks good, you got to get it done in 3 weeks, okay, and then you get people to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. And so it's a thought.
That makes sense. I'm certainly going to start looking into doing that. Well, not looking into it. I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff, and I'd love to get it to you. I'd love to figure out if that Wiley audio exists. There's a handful. The audio I'm real interested in is the one where I do an interview with the priest from I think not DePaul University, but some religious institution in Chicago. A Jesuit priest interviewed me about the Satanic Temple's Black Mass. And I believe that situation, that is the nucleus of the psi warfare that went on in my life. Because after that interview happened, it got real intense in my life. Like, I got real big harassment, real wild. So I'm not really sure, and I probably will die not knowing all the stuff that happened behind my back. But that was an interesting thing, and I just want to find that audio and be able to post it online.
Well, that's certainly a goal now.
Yeah, because that was like manufacturing consent shit. Like, that's how I feel like those people were looking to do, like a government kind of thing. Not saying they were, but like the government did with the Black Panthers or other things. They were trying to figure out how to discredit Satanism, how to discredit this stuff. I'm not sure what their goals were, but, of course. But I want to be able to have that evidence available for someone else in the future, because I think there was something I know there was something shifty going on back then. But anyway, so when you mentioned, okay, let me look at this prior to, okay, yeah, so you were interested, like, let me just talk, let me go through my list and we'll go over your stuff then. Is there? Now, I asked you about the future of Satanism last time, but I want to know, what do you think of the past? What is your take on the past that led up to where we're at today?
I think that for most of the time that LaVey was alive, there was a very interesting and active, I guess, the Satanic Panic narrative was right. There was this sort of pervasive scene of Satanists around, but it wasn't in their sense of the word. I mean, I guess in some ways, if you consider it like the influence of Siege, maybe, but I don't think that's really Satanism. I guess there's some there's some loose connection there.
Yeah, you'd be wrong there. That the Siege had zero. It wasn't even on the radar back then. It only became popular later, 20 years later.
Well, yeah, but still, that sort of influence from LaVey that went into Siege, which
Might Is Right had more influence than Siege.
Might Is Right certainly did, but I'm just talking like culturally speaking, like currently in the last like 10 years, what's been relevant, which Atomwaffen, I'm pretty sure has been kind of relevant.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, just to find all these things that really intersect with Satanism, it's interesting. And I'm not saying that these things are Satanism. I'm saying that these things intersect. It's just interesting to see where Satanism fits in the history of everything altogether. I mean, like, I remember listening to you talk on, I think it was the Orbex and Pepper podcast. I think it was late 2023. And you were talking about how when you were talking to, I think it was a White Panther Party member or something, about how when LaVey he hit big, that whole theater of the absurd thing. And I find that, as well as the aesthetic terrorist movement, which was the successors in a sense. Well, wait, was it the theater, were the hippies part of the theater of the absurd, or was that after the theater of the absurd?
Well, I think the hippies were very much like, it was like people call woke today. It was a general cultural shift. Hippies were part of this cultural. The counterculture started to shift the culture, and the hippies were produced. And that's sort of how that works with counterculture becomes culture, becomes the predominant culture at some point. It wins. Counterculture is the future. You're seeing the future when you look into counterculture. And so the theater of the absurd was the Black Panthers, White Panthers, Brown Berets, Anton LaVey, the American Indian Movement, the Yippies, stuff like that. That was the counterculture, and that those outbursts, those things on TV looked romantic to people, and so it grew the hippie thing. What came first, the hippies or the Black Panthers? I don't really know. I don't really know. But they were the hippies are, I guess you could say, I would say it's not what came first. It's the groundswell of the counterculture creates the culture. So I'm not sure what came first, but that maybe the hippies were a pushback to at some point the predominant culture, and they became the culture. I think that was something. I would think the hippies were a reflection of the Vietnam War. They were the pushback to war, and that's how we became that counterculture grew. And I think the counterculture before that was was a lot of stuff like civil rights movements, was jazz performers, blues artists. I think Malcolm X was counterculture. I know Malcolm X was counterculture. But he became culture. He became part of this culture. You know, he became big.
So, okay, that makes sense. Sort of a chicken or the egg thing.
I wonder, yeah, but I'm rambling because I just drank some bunch of coffee, so you have to excuse me.
That's fine. I'm drinking coffee right now as we speak.
So you're the history. So what is your take on the stuff that branches off of Satanism or is attracted to it? I noticed you're attracted to things like a Boyd Rice or a James Mason for some reason. And what is that reason? Do you consider yourself fascist?
I don't consider myself fascist. I think it's an interesting term, especially how it's sort of maladapted to today. Because in my mind, fascist is a capital F word that was specifically in Italy. Everything that's now is lowercase f and kind of just not really that. I mean, certainly it has the whole idea. There's the idea of the corporate and state fusion, which I certainly see as kind of a reality. Well, not a reality, the reality right now. But I think it's interesting to see how that intermixes with Satanism, especially seeing as Satanism is, in theory, a radical individualist sect, except it's also apolitical. So within that, you can find fascists and you can find, that there is some sort of lineage in that. Because, I mean, even though it was less influential, Siege does quote Anton LaVey in the Satanic Bible as well. And, LaVey did view, in some sense, I'm not sure how much, like, I know that he didn't, like Carla LaVey said with your interview with her, he might not have agreed with the people, but he had a journalistic and, I guess, sort of against sort of queer curiosity, queer in the sense of being, different and hated by society. Because, I mean, Anton LaVey is scarier than James Mason ever will be. You yourself are the one who's made the quite well point of saying that Satan is a word scarier than Nazi. So I'm very interested in how that links up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think LaVey. I think the thing is with LaVey is you sort of become nihilistic in a way. With Anton, I think is in a way with humanity when you're studying the dark side of humanity, which LaVey was a doctor in that realm where he's studying the ideas of what power is versus the illusions of power. That's why Satanism is part magic, and LaVey was also a magician because he understood magicians create illusions of power. He understood what power was and what an illusion was, and how illusions quite often are more powerful than the power that they create. The illusion is a big deal. It's a big deal. Hitler understood that, with, illusions, people build power illusions. And so high heels for men or women are this is the idea of power. So LaVey was probably, more into these groups because he's nihilistic and saying, yeah, this is what people do and this is how they think. And there's not too many new ideas out there. And, they're predisposed, as he would say about George Eric Hawthorne or anyone else. I think he said in the introduction to Might Is Right, they're predisposed to those ideals because of where they grow up, because their socioeconomic situation, stuff like that. It's the same with people who are attracted to a James Mason or to a Louis Farrakhan. They're usually ignorant and poor people, and I'm not saying Mason was wrong or Farrakhan's wrong about some of the stuff he's saying. What I'm saying is those folks attract the lowest common denominator, because they simplify things in a way that is like religion does. Good versus evil, good and evil, good and bad, stuff like that. So it's like, anyway, I think that's the trip would be like, if I were to imagine LaVey with that stuff, it's like him just shrugging his shoulders. Big fucking deal about this guy. He's one of a zillion people who've written the same book, Siege or whatever. This is what people are going to do. I don't, my take on LaVey. I don't think he was a right. I think he couldn't stick him to the wall. Is the best way to explain Satanism and Satanists is they're interested in everything, and so I'm happy to hear that you are similar. You sound to be interested in everything, and taking trying to figure things out for yourself.
Yeah, and I figured I obviously don't have the entire picture of of everything, but I don't know LaVey's politics. I won't claim to know them, and I never will, because I don't actually know. I can only go off what he said and wrote. I can't say what he actually thought, even though he was pretty honest as far as I know. But it's like, I don't particularly give a fuck what LaVey's politics actually were. Like, he could have been a full-blown fascist for all I care. I like his ideas.
Right. I like that. Exactly. But he wasn't a fascist. So I know that for a fact, and I know that because I've done the most research with that family than anyone, and it's just really it's really obvious in every which way that I'm very correct about my take on LaVey.
I mean, he's the guy who allowed people to put hooks into their bodies and suspend from his house ceilings and stuff. I don't know how a fascist would allow that. For as queer as fascism is, that's queerer than fascism allows.
Well, that's one thing, but the concept of Satanism is not about enslaving people. It's about the freedom of being yourself, the freedom of humanity, the liberty of us as an animal, of a species, and to point out that we're caged in every respect. The Crowley did the same kind of work. It was about freeing us to be who and what we are. So that has zero to do with fascism. Fascism is about listen to who we want you to be. You will be who we want you to be, or else. There is nothing like that in the Satanic Bible. There's nothing like that in LaVey's work. There's nothing like that in any of his interviews. You will listen to me, or else. There's just nothing like it's not like it definitely is not like that. Satanism is more within the it's more sorry, not sorry. That kind of thing, played out today. Satanism today is like sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, and then if you take it back to Crowley, in the Book of Lies, there's a chapter entitled Louis Ling, in which there's a line, I forget part of it, but it's, I'm an anarchist, but I'm not an anarchist in your sense of the word. I'm an anarchist in the sense that I'm feudalist, and that I think and it's like, it's kind of the same thing LaVey said in Satan Speaks, where he's like, Satanism is the only place where, you can be this whole jargon of political labels, including but not limited to, is not limited to both Zionism and Nazism, socialism and capitalism, communism and Bolshevism, and all these different things which seem like they would contradict. But if you think about being radical individualists, it makes so much sense, because Satanists can't be stuck to the wall. So it's all of these things at once, and it's none of them at the same time.
Yes.
It's a conglomerate of fluid thought.
Is that a quote? Is that a quote you just read?
It's a mixture of two different quotes that I can't quite remember the exact wording from.
Who are you quoting?
So the first part was from Aleister Crowley in the Book of Lies, and a poem of sorts called Louis Ling. The second part was Anton LaVey, and I was kind of just stringing the lineage along and showing the progression of the idea, as well as encapsulating the idea of Satanism as a fluid thought concept
that erodes constructs. That's something I came up with, that one there. Yeah. Well, that's it. You know, that's the simplicity of it. And I think LaVey as the artist is sort of mocking people, because as much as there is a deviation, we are not Satanists aren't everyone, and everyone is not a Satanist. But I think everyone, or a great deal of people, think that way. They are not so religious minded. Even when you meet, you have to be around some dim-witted motherfuckers when they just believe what's in their Bible. But most people who say, you know, they're Bible bangers, or they're Christians or Catholics, when you get to talk to them, their ideas are all over the place. They're like, oh, that's Buddhist. Oh, that's that's this, that's communist, that's this. When you listen to them, when you hear them, most people are nuanced with their opinions. But if their preacher were sitting at the coffee table and they were to say something, and their preacher were to say, oh, that sounds satanic, they would, oh, I'm so sorry. Because those are the people that are probably not, I should not say probably, they are not satanic, because they're going to, you know, go back on the natural thought of a fucking human being. Our species is going to be all over the place. We're going to think about everything. We're not going to be so pigeonholed, you know. And so I you know, I see LaVey's work, or the artist's work in general, real artists, as the people who save humanity as much, if not more, than science does. You know, the philosopher, the prophetic. You know, Neil Tyson talked about science killing philosophy, and I think about how in order to kill philosophy, you have to kill prophecy. You have to be able to see into the future, and science can't see into the future. Science deals with the past more than anything. How do we fix what, you know, like they're testing, you know, they're dealing with the past. But LaVey was prophetic. He was a prophet, which is incredible. You know, great artists are. And, you know, I'm not looking at him as a religious person. I'm like, wow, this shit he was saying, that people, again, like Tesla, other people that were creative minds, great artists, they were prophets.
Well, yeah.
They looked into the future. Wait, hold on. They looked into the future and saw what was coming, or they were willing to guess at what was going to be the future, at the risk of being laughed at and ridiculed. And LaVey was one of those great people. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that people laughed at him about are coming true right now. It's amazing to me. I love that stuff. And I think that's where I talk about with the creation of the Satanic Almanac, is Satanism is about eroding constructs. It's about looking into the future and going, what is next? What's going on here? What's happening here right now? The here and now. What's the talk on the street? What's the word on the bus? And then you're like, oh, everyone's talking about fascism, let's say this year, because of the president, or what's going on, the shift to right wing, the shift to taking food away from poor people. So how does that apply to Satanists? You know, and that's where you start getting off on in the Satanic Almanac once a year about going, what can we put out next April 30th that's going to be relevant to the next year? And we are in this heavy, you know, this moment, like, you know, this political moment, and then you look globally, and you look into the science of things, and you sort of try to play with poetry or artwork or whatever you can to put that into the Satanic Almanac, to sort of talk about the future. What is the future for us? And that's the human species. And then for us as Satanists.
I think the butterfly effect is something that should really be focused on, because in Satanism, it's the here and now, and the here and now is what creates what happens next.
Right. It's sort of like when I talk about that. Well, I'll let you finish that in a second. I just want to get this out. Like when I say influence is always forgotten but never dies. something like that. I have some quote out there where influence never dies, but it's always forgotten. And that means like Crowley's forgotten quite often with when you see what he did, he influenced, or LaVey, or any artist. Myself, what the fuck those motherfuckers. I'm talking about me. I've influenced things where I see my influence. I know it was not there in the culture before I did it. I know that. I was standing there 30 fucking years ago. I know what I did. I know it wasn't there before me. I know I did this. I know everything caught on. I know I had influence. Yet I'm forgotten, but my influence isn't dead. It's got a life of its own. And other people are using things that I did or I put forward as their own. You know, they're like, this is mine. This is my thoughts. And I'm like, no, that was a group, that was me or some of my friends. We did that. I watched that. And as much as that the older generation is forgotten, our influence will never die. And that's important to do as part of the species, is have influence while you're young or even old. It does, you know, I think relevance is relevance is a weird thing when people talk about relevance. They're sort of being ageist or something like that. They're talking about stuff like that, but relevance is a weird concept in and of itself. It's a moment, and things that are dead could be relevant again. Abe Lincoln is still fucking relevant. So I also say, like, you're relevant until you're dead, but you could be relevant beyond your death. You know, the goal maybe is to be relevant 1,000 years after your death. That's my goal.
Well, you know, it's kind of like, have you checked Ye's Twitter in the last like 2 days?
Well, I don't know. I'm all over the place.
I'm kind of following it really closely right now because everything he's saying, I'm like, this is just fucking Anton LaVey. What the hell? Like, I'm reading it and I'm like, this is just pure Satanism he's spouting at this point.
Well,
I don't mean that in like, because I know he calls himself a Christian, but like what I'm seeing is just pure Satanism in there. Like, yeah. It's like I can't call him anything but a satanic artist because it's just pure Satanism, and I can't even explain all of it because it's just so much. It's like a sensory overload if I try to explain it, but it's like pure Satanism.
Right. And I think that's a lot of LaVey's influence, and even Crowley. Absolutely. And their
like,
influence.
Everyone that like takes in Kanye West's like words and like actually like sees it, which I see, I'm seeing a lot more people kind of seem to realize, like, you know, he's kind of making some sense.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I love that. And well, that again, the prophetic, when you're ahead of when you're able to have the fortitude, the guts to say what you think is true, or say what you think is the future, or say what you think should be the future. You get hurt, beaten up, ridiculed, but at the end of the day, you're hearing things like this. Like, I think what he's saying is, and I see what you're saying. A lot of people are like, go on. He's making a point here. He's making some good points. And I think, you know, his way is a Chicago shock jock way. Like, that stuff, the way he's doing things comes out of Chicago. And it comes from Steve Dahl. Steve Dahl started talking this before him. You would never hear conversations like Kanye or anything like even Trump. Things were real tame.
Well, you know what I'm seeing with Trump
is, hold on. Let me just finish that thought. So Kanye uses this shock doc. He shocks you into paying attention to him, and then the nuance of what he's saying, he lets go. So he wants to open you up. He opens you up. He opens up your passages, whatever it is, and then he hits you. And that's like the brilliance of that shock that he's influenced by the aesthetic terrorism movement. He's influenced by that, and you can see that with his bosom shirts and everything else. So he's doing our stuff. He's using our tactics. So when he does what he does, I'm like, that's just what we did. That's what that 24-hour show you were listening to all the time. That's what we were doing. Exactly. He's not doing anything we didn't do. I mean, he's doing the exact thing we did. Picking on things that he knows are outrageous, are going to, you know, race, shit like that, sex. You know, he's basically mimicking the aesthetic terrorism movement in a lot of ways. But they're forgotten. We're forgotten, but the influence isn't. And our influence is alive in that in Kanye. I can see that. And it should be, because he's paying attention to art. He's an artist. So he was paying attention to what was going on when he was going to art school in Japan and stuff like that. When we were doing our thing and he was a kid, he was paying attention to that.
Yeah, and then it's like with Trump, you know, you're the one that's started saying, but Trump is the most satanic president we have ever had. I personally don't.
In my lifetime. I
do think that there is one other president that would be labeled as such, and that would be Teddy Roosevelt, and there is that direct influence there.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different thing. I don't really like to. I don't care about what happened outside of my lifetime too much in my conversations, because that becomes too much of, this conversation will go sideways, because I'm going to be asking too many questions about Teddy Roosevelt. So I can only talk about presidents within my lifetime, because the history of Teddy Roosevelt is going to be written by the victors or someone else. I wasn't there to see it, but I am here to witness. I am a physical witness to. From Reagan to Trump. From Reagan to Trump, I've witnessed those presidencies. And so that's why I say what I say. A lot of people would say the founding fathers, Ben Franklin, Harold, George Washington, the founding fathers were all satanic. The people who wrote the Declaration of Independence were satanic. That's a concept a lot of people have. I think Matt, I forget his name, Paradise, he has a book, a zine, he put out at one time with a bunch of quotes from the founding fathers that were very satanic. So in a historic concept, you can say that, but I'm only talking about within my lifetime and something that we can actually is tangible to us versus something we have to trust what we read.
Well, I'm just trying to go off like the past, because you asked me about the past.
Yeah, the past of Satanism.
I know, and I'm doing the past of Satanism as well as its lineage, because the founding fathers as well as Teddy Roosevelt, I'm pretty sure, are all de facto Satanists in some sense.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm looking. I'm looking for within the concept of like the 60s to now, within this lifetime.
All right, 60s.
I mean, if we're going to talk about the entire history of things, we're going to go into Beethoven. We're going to go into the, it's going to be a really long, it's going to be a long call. It's not going to make a lot of sense anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally be fine with that, but I don't feel like doing another 24-hour thing for at least another few months.
Yeah, but those things just spiral. You have to have focus when you're trying to publish something like an interview like this, or I should say it's not an interview, it's a conversation in a satanic almanac. It has to have some sort of focus. It can't go all the left and right. And well, let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt now and Trump. It's like, what the fuck is that conversation? It has nothing to do with what I was saying. Trump is the most satanic president in my lifetime. And I say that because I don't even like to talk about the guy, because it gives him too much power. And I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff that he's doing. But I also try to judge these people when they get out of office. I wait to see what happens, but for me, as real as politics, I only mention that Trump is the most satanic president because of how he operates, where there is no rules, there is no truths. And I use him as an example of that, but it's not an example of this satanic leader or someone that I think represents Satanism well. I just think he uses satanic ideals to get what he wants. But I don't think he would be a great representative for Satanism, let's say. Maybe. I mean, I don't, I use that in a real small example of what I'm talking about there versus, American history. Fuck, whatever about that shit. Politics. My point is Teddy Roosevelt, all the fucking presidents, fuck all of them. They're people that are trying to control people. I don't need a master. I don't need a president. I don't need a boss. I'm an actual Satanist though. So I don't think, as far as personality that might run for president, they might all be satanic at some point. They are all looking to climb power. You know, they're all looking for power and have control over people and weird shit like that. But the way in my lifetime to watch how things have played out, this dude's satanic, and I love it, but I don't love him. And I don't. One of my point is here is I don't think politics has a lot to do with Satanism, even though everything you do is political in this society. I think Satanism is a very individual and impulsive kind of thing. And so once Trump comes in the conversation, it makes it again political. Like, you know, we're talking about presidents, and you know, it's like I'd rather talk about magicians than people who are faces of power, because I don't know if these people even have power. I think they go to actual Satanists people. I think they go to actual rich people and ask them to give them money so they can be a president. And so they'll do what their masters, you know, Trump is a puppet. Presidents are puppets of people who have real power, real money, bankers, stuff like that, real stuff. And so it's like, if I were to, if any, you know, like, yeah, like think about this. The Pope is more powerful than Trump. The Pope is the most powerful man in the world. And you see that when you see this new Pope come into office, royalty bows to the Pope. Presidents, kings, queens, all of them bow and kiss his ring. All of them. All of them. And so it's like, that's power. That's motherfucking power. They've got a goddamn gang going. You know, the Catholic Church has got some shit going on. And I've also spoke to people like the guy who runs the Truth Court. He's friends with the guy who runs archive.org. And he talks about how the Roman Church, the Roman Catholic Church in Rome, their library under the Vatican has the most occult works in the world that you will never, ever see. You will never be able to read. They were able to get access to part of the library, the guy from archive.org and him. And, you know, he talks to me, he told me there's hidden knowledge under the Vatican. And these guys aren't paranoid crazy. These people are the people that created the internet. Like Brewster Kahle and my guy that works on Truth Court with me, the guy who runs that, he created a lot of the AI that you see today 50 years ago. So I work with people who are, you know, like this guy has 3 doctrines, 3 doctor degrees. The other guy has 2. They're really smart, very accomplished. You know, they built the fucking illusion of the internet. They built the internet, you know, so they're not like conspiracy theorists. And so the Pope has an amazing amount of power. And when I heard about the occult books, the hidden knowledge he has under the Vatican, I would imagine that's a great reason, a great deal of their power is the information they hold, the knowledge they have. You know.
Yeah. And that's what I see a lot of the last, 60 years of Satanism as having. I think there's a lot of things like Kanye West is taking from and learning from with it. I think there's a lot within that influence. I mean, I don't think gay marriage would have happened if Anton LaVey hadn't, been so, like, I guess okay with it, like, nonchalantly.
I definitely I would definitely say that he did a large part to help that situation out. Absolutely. He was a person who was okay with it. And he amongst like people who are attracted to power and dark art, let's say, to convince those people to not be angry at gay people or women or people of color was a big deal because, as anyone who's attracted to power, you can easily get a bunch of clowns that you can get to beat people up for you. Let's say because you don't like people of color or you don't like gay people or whatever, as like Nazis do. And so it's like LaVey didn't do that. He did the exact opposite of that, which is cool.
Yeah, and then, I don't, also among those lines, I don't think a lot of trans things right now would be so I guess, able to be done, even though I know that's a really reductive term, all things considered. But I don't think a lot of it would be so present if not for, someone like Marilyn Manson or, David Bowie or Annie Lennox.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
The influence, I think, reverberates, and I really find it interesting to see all that influence, especially from like a lot of the more, I guess, less liked figures within those things. Like I love Varg Vikernes. I find his ideas fascinating. Quite a I think he's a pretty brilliant mind. I don't necessarily find his conclusions correct all the time, but I also don't know. Maybe he could be correct. I don't know exactly. But I just find I find the whole influence of all that, because Varg wouldn't have existed without Anton LaVey. Like, none of that black metal stuff would have happened without Anton LaVey. It all comes back to LaVey with a lot of this stuff.
I think so. I think that's that influence that never dies but is always forgotten. That people are. I think it's this. I also believe in that 8 generations myth. Like, it takes a long time for change. So I think the one thing I know, I know that Satanism is a tool of change. Like I said, it erodes constructs, and so I hope people continue to use that tool of change to move humanity forward versus enslaving humanity.
And in terms, Church of Satan people can understand, as LaVey said, the Satanism's fetish is reformation.
Who says this?
LaVey.
And what are you getting at by it?
Because I see a lot of the time, anytime anyone says something like that, the church, like a lot of Church of Satan people, assume that means some sort of collective or group organized effort.
Okay.
Or some sort of like virtue signaling good guy badge thing, like saying that all Satanists should work towards one common goal, which in a sense they are, if you consider that self-preservation is the highest law, but that's individual.
But that's not a common goal. It's a self. So we're really not like I've already said this. I'm glad you reiterate you're confirming it with the LaVey quote. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It erodes construct. Correct. Yeah. I'm going to ask you something. Zena is about. There's a Zena LaVey quote. Zena LaVey on LaVey and Satanist behavior in practice is best understood as dark triad personality disorder with cosplay and ritual fetishes. That's how Zena describes Satanism. What do you think of that?
Was that in the Jordan Peterson interview?
I don't know. I'm asking you what you thought of that.
I think that there's a good amount of truth to that. I see a lot of people who put on a sort of this, just it's so I see it as really self-destructive in a sense, like front of just pure misanthropy and just everybody should, like, we need, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but there's this weird fronting I see, and it's like you said, the perverse ego, and I'm trying not to like reiterate a lot of stuff right now.
Oh, it's okay.
But I also have a problem with the whole dark triad idea, especially with how Machiavellianism is thrown in there, especially because I read Machiavelli, and I'm like, I don't see how this is some sort of negative idea. This is just, it's like Might is Right. It's just explaining the reality of how people rule, how leaders rule, if that makes sense. It's no different than the Dune books. But in another sense, I can see that people dislike it because it can also inform totalitarianism on how to run, but so could, the people that voted for a totalitarian government. I think it was Sylvia Plath that said every woman loves a fascist.
That's funny. Go on.
What was the question again? I kind of got
lost. It was talking about Zena LeVay and her quote about the Dark Triad, and you were going on about Dark Triad stuff and Machiavellianism and stuff.
Well, I see a lot of that, though. I also wonder how much of that is coming from her own self or maybe her own experiences. I won't say anything because I don't know for certain, but I've heard interesting things within interviews with like Stanton and stuff, but I'm not going to claim to know anything. I've just heard interesting things.
Yeah, of course. You don't have to put this disclaimer on it. I think everyone knows that's the case.
Well, I'm not going to say anything for fact because I don't know. I wasn't.
You heard, but you don't. It doesn't matter. It is a fact. If Stanton LeVay said something, you could say, "Well, Stanton said this." You source your stuff. Who knows what if you have to deal with everything you're standing in the room or seeing videos of it, that is a ridiculous concept for younger people to think that you need such extreme receipts. You really don't, and you don't have them in life, and like most people in power aren't there because they had video evidence. Most people in prison aren't there because there was video evidence and a ton of receipts. They're there because of circumstantial evidence. They're there because of other nuances that are spoken and evidence that's weighed out against them or for them based on words, spells, word, So you could, it's better just to speak your mind and say, well, Stanton LeVay said this about Zena, because basically you're saying, well, I know I've read some stuff, but I don't want to say it because I don't know if it's true. Well, it doesn't matter. If you've got a source, just say it. Say it. So, most people, if it's Stanton LeVay, most people are going to discount him as a source.
That's true. Well, Stanton has said some interesting things in interviews that I find when I hear something like that from her, I'm like, how much of that is projection based on what I've heard Stanton say on something like that Off to the Witch podcast or anything, but
beautiful. That's exactly what I would say. That's exactly the point. You don't have to be afraid to say things like that. What the fuck? Just say it. Like that's exactly it. And
but the nuance of it is that there is also Zena's word against his. I haven't heard Zena say anything on it. I have not heard or seen her comment on it. I'm not.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Again, there doesn't need to be two sides. What Stanton's feeling, you want to go these jive things. Stanton's feelings are valid. What he said is valid. We can talk about what he said without having a ton of evidence and having the other side. You can see it based on circumstantial evidence, how LeVay's family was treated, how his daughter acts, how she was taught to act, how she says, this is how my father taught me to act, so I'm going to do this in this way. These Stanton and Bo Zena are some of the most knowledgeable sources as far as Satanism goes. They grew up in it. Same with Carla. So it's like, I don't really need to hear Zena's side about Stanton to talk about a general subject of a personality disorder like she's talking about. I think what she's saying is very true in a large degree. When you start groups, Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, you have a lot of wackos that are attached to it that use, and I've said this before, and I think I said this in the Satanic Almanac, the first one, is that people will use Satanism to mask their personality disorders or their criminal behavior. They're like, oh, this, and a lot of people will use Christianity or Catholicism or something else to mask their aggression or their wants or needs or stuff that they're ashamed of or stuff that's socially unacceptable. They'll be like, I'm going to go blow up an abortion clinic because I'm angry at the world and I want to have violence. I want to hurt someone. And so I can put a face on this and say it was for the God, it was for my Catholic God or my Christian God. And I think, a lot of people, I think what Zena says has a lot of weight. I know it has a lot of weight. She's Zena LeVay. And I think what you're saying is true too. She's projecting a bit, like that's exactly it. That's why it becomes almost empirical. because she's lived that life. She's lived that life. Even if it's a subconscious honesty, she's lived that life. And to know the life that she lived, and to know the life Stanton lived, and Anton lived, and Diane lived, and Carla lived, I know this. I bet I'm an insider.
Yeah, and then, I also would even extend that sort of projection even to Stanton, because, I was talking to Brian Werner a few years ago, and I heard some interesting things about why he and Marilyn Manson ended up on bad terms. And, I think it extends even to people like, I guess even myself I could consider, because I'm not going to point fingers, because they're still 4 pointed back at me, like anything I say can and easily be reflected on myself, and if someone says it, it can also be reflected on them. I think it's a struggle Satanists have to deal with their ego, and at this point I don't even want to say I'm a Satanist. I just, if someone wants to call me that, that's fine. I just don't give a fuck, if that makes sense. But there's that perverse ego that's also there, like, I'm a Satanist, I'm this alien elite, as Peter Gilmore calls it in the Satanic Scriptures, which, like, okay, it's this alien elite, but what does that actually mean? Because what it attracts is people who are essentially bottom feeders and stuff. I see, like, and it's like, I got people pissy at me for saying this, but Robert Leuthold of the Church of Satan is absolutely a bottom feeder, and I don't really give a fuck what anyone says. That guy, like, went on for months about me and another person as 16-year-olds just for talking to you, and insinuated all sorts of, like, weird shit. And it's like, based on what? Because we dared to ask a few fucking questions? It's this weird, like, and I think it's part of the fact that there is that authoritarian bent to Satanism, where it's like, you have to be on top, but it's like, at what point does it become counterproductive? Because, like, I got, people pissy at me for saying shit about him because, oh no, he's in a wheelchair. So what if he's in a wheelchair? I'm going to hold him to the standards he's holding us to. If he's going to throw a piss fit and act like like this, insecure, vulnerable narcissist, which I'm using in the correct term here, like, why shouldn't I say that there's a dark triad in Satanism that is incredibly destructive and counterproductive? And I'm not saying that Robert Leuthold lives a shittier, counterproductive life. I'm just saying that there's this evidence of just, I would say, solipsism and vulnerable narcissism that runs rampant within Satanism, whether people notice it or not.
Well, yeah, well, that's just basically what Zena's saying. That's what she's talking about. I think there's a lot,
I agree with her.
but it's not like, I think you can say bottom feeders, or you could say young people. And so people that are seekers of different knowledge, all are fine with me. That's when I try to talk about, like, what I've tried to say about the Satanic Temple people. I think they're seekers. They're looking for a different way. They're looking for something that's different that they can cling to, that might be a different idea. So they're trying to understand something. So for that, I applaud them. I applaud them that they're trying to look outside their box, which, is probably whatever it is, Christianity, whatever, maybe it's even atheism, whatever it is. And so you can call them bottom feeders, or you can call them young and dumb. But I can see where you're going with Robert, because he's not young and dumb. He's been around for a while, and he's a tool. And there's not everyone's going to be a president. Not everyone's going to be the king or a reverend or whatever else. So he's a tool of Peter's. He's a lapdog. And he does what he does, and that makes Peter happy. And so he continues to do it. I'm sure, he'll talk to Peter, and Peter will go, oh, that was funny. That was good. And so he's going to continue to do that. Peter's not going to really encourage him to be a proper person or communicate differently too much. Maybe he would. But I think what Zine is saying is true with a large number of people who are attracted to Satanism. They got a lot of problems. And I would say a lot of people who are attracted to religion or people giving them answers have a lot of problems.
It's like, I think you said, there's a thing of mama's boys and people that are really submissive, projecting dominance.
Yeah. That is that. And that's not necessarily the same thing as I'm talking about now. It's like growing up and trying to learn things. But I think there is when LaVey talks about dominance and submission and stuff like that, there is that is something that is involved in our species. So we're talking about humanity as an animal, as a species, Satanists are. And so when we talk about that, we're talking about dominance and submission, and then you have people attracted to that conversation, and so on and so forth. My point is that I get where you're going with Robert, and I think what Zena's saying is true to a point, and I also think, though, I would add to that it's nuanced, and I say that when you start to define yourself as a Satanist, you're an extremist. You're looking for trouble, or you're looking to project power to move you, to protect you, to scare people, and so I think we're extremists in a large. People who are attracted to that word are very extreme. What are they extreme at? I'm not really sure until I get to know them. Extremely crazy, who knows? Extremely fun, extremely dark. Maybe they have a great sense of humor. I find a lot of Satanists that are just dark and have a great sense of humor and laugh at the whole thing, which I love.
What's the difference between any of those?
What?
My question is, what's the difference between any of those at a certain point?
Any of what?
Any of those traits you just listed.
Well, they're all different traits. I mean,
well,
some people.
I think a Satanist would be all of those in one, except none of them at the same time.
Well, yeah, you can have you're obviously you're everything at once. I guess you could say you have emotions, but there's people who have character, and you're not everything at once. You're because then you become nothing. There's people who have a different sense of humor than other people, and so that's what I'm talking about. There's people who come into it with a dark sense of humor, but they're not criminal. They're not. They don't have these weird criminal issues. So their character is bringing them to see. They're seeking knowledge, and not everyone's the same when they seek knowledge. So we have stratification here, and you have people that have different characters, and some are criminal. Some have a character that they have a great sense of humor about Satanism. Some people are using it to be predatory, and some people are using it to stop predators. Those are very different things. And yes, as life is very individual, circumstantial, and nuanced, yes, you can experience all of those things in a lifetime. That's true. But I don't know if they reflect your character. Some people have a victim mentality throughout their life. Some people are predators throughout their life, and they may experience being victimized. The predator may experience being prey, but at their heart, they're predators, and they're looking to predate, to be on top of something. So for me, probably the biggest problem in Satanism, or I don't know about the biggest, but a problem in Satanism would be to see things in a way like that, because, well,
maybe that Sylvia Plath is backwards now that I think about it. Maybe every fascist loves a woman or needs one, like a dominatrix.
I don't know. You're taking me off what I was saying, though. I forgot what I was saying now. Fuck. I don't know about every Satanist. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think there's such a thing. You know what I mean? I don't think there's a general way. What?
I don't think there's a general way, but I think there's a general trend, because I mean, I I have paid very close attention to I did pay very close attention to the online sphere with Satanism intensely for like 3 years there, like up close and personally. And a lot of it is just what you said. It's a lot of young people that are they are figuring things out, and I can't fault them for a lot of it. Though I can, because it's their own responsibility. But at the same time, it's like it's fellow travelers. It's nothing that I can't say whether it's intentional or not that they're harmful. Though with some people, I absolutely can. But I think I'm forgetting where I'm going with this too.
Well,
I'm on my coffee.
what?
I'm on my second cup of coffee.
I see. The idea that everyone is the same, different or whatever, I don't think is correct. You know, or you know, everyone, you know, like I don't think a Satanist is all of those things. I think then I'm the same as Robert Lilfold or whatever. He's the same as me. I have a crazy amount of integrity. As a Satanist, I choose to live my life. Here's one of the hardest things I want to let you know. Stop, and don't interrupt me this time. But I think part of the hardest thing for Satanists is to not live up to the standards that they see Anton or other people. A lot of people talk within Satanism about supremacy, satanic supremacy, and how they have to. They'll start to say how satanic they are based on how rich they are, how much success they've had in this society, how many cars they have, how shiny their shoes are, when really that represents their insecurities. And I have to remind them, Anton LaVey died broke, no money, no fucking money. Okay. So when you start to tell me how you're a Satanist because you own 3 homes, that really isn't a Satanist. That's probably you're insecure and you're got a small dick or something like that. You got some issues that you got to tell me what you own. And for me, yeah, I know you spent 3 years in the trenches with Satanism, but I got 30 years. Okay. So we got this. So for me, throughout that time, I've had to you make mistakes, and you either pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and learn from them, or you stick to them. And that's where some of the stratification comes in. I choose not to stick to my mistakes. I choose to try to learn from them, and to no longer be ignorant with that stuff. And I know early on, I tried to live up to what I consider a satanic ideal, where I had to be very successful in society. I had to show my strength. I had to constantly flex. And it's almost you can equate it to what people talk about, like male toxic masculinity, let's say, where it's like it becomes very exhausting, and it has nothing to do with what I, in my heart, think success is. So success to me isn't having a bunch of cars. I think that's silly, actually. Success to me isn't a lot of things that people show as successful. To me, I just don't see it. It doesn't register with me as successful. I have different ideals as to what is successful. So if my ideal is living in a mud hut and raising fucking chipmunks, and I am able to do that in my life and be happy, I am therefore successful. I don't need to be successful on society standards. And I think a lot of Satanists get caught up in that kind of thing, where they're competing to show how successful they are. And you get caught in this this treadmill, like a rat, like you're just running in this treadmill. And I've been there. I've worn the satanic clown suit, all black all the time. I've done these things. I've experienced that world. And in my living as a public Satanist, as my life, as my impulse, not just my studies and not what I've learned, but what's tangible that my hands have touched, I've learned that that's not the best. I don't think that's a good idea. And I think people forget the individual, and they look at the idol, like Anton LaVey. What does this person own? What do they have? How much have they been on TV? How many downloads do they have? That's success. Look at, they're better than them. They're stronger than them. They have more hits. They have more downloads. They have more, and it's about quality, not quantity, actually. But people don't see things like that in a lot of ways with Satanism. They'll see this constant competitiveness, and I don't think there's a lot of joy in continuing to run a race that you can't win. Part of what Satanism is understanding who and what the fuck you are. Enjoying that self. Like LaVey says, if you're ugly, be the best ugly. If you're this, be the best. If you're this, be the best. And that's where it comes down to. You have to really figure out who you are and what is success to you. No matter what your idealistic version, like I want to be a basketball player. I want to be tall. I'm 5'8". I want to be fucking 5'11". Ain't never happening. So I got to find joy in my life as it is. And so I think when you talk about people coming into the fold with a lot of these character traits or personality traits, I think, yes, you can have moments in your life where you experience every little thing, every little character trait. Like you want to be a sadist, a masochist, all these kind of things. But I think your character is something that is something that's amazing. It's something that I imagine that we're almost like LaVey talks about, we're born, not made. And so that character is born. And so most people who are going to excel with the idea of Satanism are going to be people who are born with a character inside them that wants more. But what is that? A lot of people might see more right away as money. What is that more? And if that more is suckling a teat and being held by a woman, and as might say, needing a woman in their life to comfort them, a comfort woman, and you can call them a mama's boy, then that's success to them. You know, they've gotten that and it's success. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. People like to say those things. Like when I say that, people like to laugh or whatever at it, but it's like, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's probably a bad thing to get in a dysfunctional relationship versus one that you enjoy. You know, and I think, you know, you want what you want, you know, and so there's plenty of femmes out there that want daddy, that have, you know, they want a daddy, and so there's, you know, it's probably good if men admit they want a mommy, you know. It's not I don't think that's a derogatory thing to be a mama's boy necessarily. A lot of people will see it in a fascist sense of the way. They'll see that as being weak. You need a woman, you need a partner. But I don't think that maybe that's something from the past. Maybe that's not the future. Maybe it's a very individual, modulated future where there is no couples, there are no partners, and but that's a very lonely world. I don't know. I mean, you're in a partnership now. You must enjoy it because you're in it. So it's like, you know, like being alone doesn't feel natural to me. I don't like it. So, but I'm not going to be submissive in a dysfunctional way. I'm not going to be a mama's boy anymore or any longer in a dysfunctional, abusive relationship. Though I don't mind playing that in the bedroom, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, with that, I'm curious with how, considering, yet again, LaVey was one of the very large proponents of artificial human companions. And like I sent you the other day, there's that whole cyber brothel, I think it's called, in Germany. So yes. I'm curious, how lonely will people actually be? And I'm not saying that just sex robots will cure loneliness, because that wouldn't do much. That would just fix one gap in, you know, human relations. But I'm curious, if we keep developing AI, how lonely would we be if you know, AI becomes a sort of more augmented into reality than it already is?
Yeah, I think there's a future that might be really grand. You know, I think of the future in that respect as AI almost like the ultimate gaslighting situation, but without the harm, where it's like LeVay talked about, like having these environments. You have that with your virtual reality glasses now. You have almost, you're in an environment. You're in it. You feel it. You're in it. And so I think if you had a sex doll that had sex smells, had sex secretions, was really warm, felt like a human being, and had AI implemented in it, and understood who you were, like psychologically, and they were able to tell you things to uplift you, to look at you, to know just what you needed to be a better human being. If I had that with me right now, like just someone, I show them the artwork, they're like, oh, that's incredible. And they tell me exactly what I need, exactly what mama didn't tell me, exactly what mom didn't give me. Whatever love that was, if this doll could do that, and they really passed for a physical human being, and the warmth was there, the physical warmth. I'm not. I think the only thing that would make me feel lonely is the idea of like this toxic idea of accomplishment. Well, they're not real. I bought this. But right now I don't see anything real in dating. Every single fucking person selling pussy. Every motherfucking person's got a price tag on their sex. And it's like, oh my God, it's incredible how things have really changed. And so I think that would really, I don't know if it would be I think it would be a tool that would be very useful. I don't know if it would be the be all end all, but I do think it would help with loneliness. I think it would help a person a lot. And that help in and of itself, like therapy or anything else, I think that help, if there were a robot here doing that kind of stuff with me, I probably would be more secure in leaving the house more often. Maybe it would help me become more secure in certain areas. Who knows? Maybe it would be able to advise me, and hey, maybe you want to go out on this side of town. They'd know more about things than I do. They'd be able to say, hey, there's a concert going on. You probably meet someone there. If you wear this shirt. I'm okay with the robots helping me out and advising me and taking care of some of those minor things. And I don't like the inconsistencies of dating. I just want to cage someone. I just want to I want to have a girlfriend. I want them now under my bed in chains, sort of joking, but sort of. I'm maybe old school. I want to own that shit. I want someone so interested in me that they're here every fucking day and always want to be around and always want to make stuff with me. I'm looking for a partner that just wants to make artwork with me all day, and we get along like that. So if there was an AI robot that I woke up to and it was like, hey, do you want to get rolling on that sculpture we were working on last night? I'd be like, yeah, let's do that. And they would probably automatically go, I'll make coffee. You just go ahead and take care of things. And I'm like, oh, boom, do that. And they would come over and tell me the world's greatest jokes and probably entertain me. And I think, again, the only thing that would make it feel weird is my knowing that this was a robot. It's not a real thing. This isn't real. This is fake. So it's like something someone could make fun of me about. Like, well, you don't have a real wife. You have a robot wife. Like, it's like just carrying on the same garbage from this society over there. Your wife is fat and ugly. The fuck, man? You don't have a prime piece of ass or what? Now, this is talking my generation. People.
It sounds like the same argument against like gay marriage. Like marriage is between one man and one woman. It sounds like that sort of thing.
Right. It would be something like that would attack like this weird ego thing, even if it were a tool that was working. Like, it's like when I look at AI filmmaking, it's better than filmmakers. Like, some of the AI stuff that's happening is incredible. The imagination it has, the stuff that's happening through AI filmmaking, the little bits that it can do is amazing. It's incredible. It's better than anything we've done. And people are all against it. And I'm like, maybe this is democratizing filmmaking. Now everyone can make movies, not just people with money. I think it's incredible. And so I think that's probably the same thing I would think about an AI robot, is it was probably pretty incredible. Now, would inside me yearn for more? Yearn for the touch of a real human being? Maybe, if the scientists couldn't get the real dial right to set off the secretions that would be like you set off endorphins and stuff like that. You set off these chemicals that attract you to a person. So if they could recreate those chemicals that fly through the air when you're going to have sex with someone and when you're having sex, those things that are triggering all your shit, like if they can do that, I don't know what else we would need in that situation, because those are what creates the illusion, those chemicals.
Well, I think there's also other instances that also create that illusion.
Well, yeah, but it's probably on the smallest level. It's the chemicals. But sure, I guess you're right. High heels and fishnet stockings work. Sure.
No, I'm thinking more like kind of what you said, just creating stuff. Like, even if you're not doing it with the person, just like, just as an example, for the other day, I'm building a Lego set, and then they're, doing a coloring book or something, like, or just watching a movie with someone, or just having a good conversation that you get really invested in, and it goes all sorts of places.
Yeah, but all those things are going to let off those chemicals.
Exactly.
So it's like, that's what you're saying is just what I said. Like, when those chemicals go off, that's when you're going to be with a real robot doll. Like, whether you're coloring and making Legos and you're having chemicals go off, like that robot will probably be programmed to let off some chemicals of excitement. So you're sitting across talking about Legos and they're excited and everyone's getting excited. Yeah, that all leads to fucking, right?
Well, I think. Well, no, I think that it's kind of like. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something, but I got distracted by saying no, not all of it, and it's like, oh, I think that it's very possible to be. I mean, the hormones that the estrogen that trans women take is synthetic, so like it's not from, like, it's completely like built up from scratch. It's not like taken from another, like a biological female. It's completely made from scratch. So I would say that sort of thing isn't far off, especially considering that AI is now having hallucinations. It's able, there's also that I saw something the other day where apparently they found a way to sort of fuse it with some sort of biological substance of some sorts. As I don't think it's that far reaching or far off.
Oh, I don't think it is either. But
my question is like, what happens when that is? Because I do think that could be very easily turned into a form of control over people.
Well, yeah, everything can control people. It's like coffee can control people. That's true. But so that goes on with every invention. All these bad things can happen, but all these good things can happen, and you really don't know which is which until it happens. They didn't know lead paint was going to fucking destroy the minds of most of people in America until they laid it on everything, and they found out, wow, it's dumbing us down. Lead paint's a real dangerous thing, so they quit using it. So it's like you have to, like the internet. It came about and it was a cool idea, and you can see a lot of negative factors from when it was invented to do to what it's become. It's become a drug, and so people are really addicted to it. So yeah, if I had something like that here, I would be very addicted to it. I'd be up in that ass a lot. And the better robot was, the more it would have control of me, for sure. And especially because I don't know what kind of control I could have over it. But those are all, you wonder what it would look like in the future. The future is different. The future is becoming different. And this is your future, probably not mine. While I'd love to live another 40 years and see what's going to happen, those chances get less and less for me. But you're at a moment like I was with the internet, where all this AI stuff is going to change the face of the world. Everything that you've learned up to now is probably fucking insignificant. It's probably pretty much a waste of fucking time because of AI. And I feel like it's wild watching all these graduations right now go on, and think in my back of my head, like, wow, you've probably just wasted an immense amount of time at school. And as cool as that is, I mean, there's just it's gonna change every single thing we know, how we learn, how we work, how things work us, how things control us. And I think it would be a lot better to control people through a sex doll than through fear, than through making them afraid. If we need to make a bargain with the human species and create a companion for them versus making them afraid in a jail cell, you're going to go to jail. I'd rather make them a sex companion, and stuff like that. I'd rather control people through joy and pleasure than through pain and imprisonment. And people who want to control people through pain and imprisonment are assholes. They're just assholes. And those are people that I want to give pain and imprisonment to. So I guess I want to control those people with pain and imprisonment too. So I guess I can see their point, but that's not my ideal situation. Isn't that it would be, sex dolls for everyone. That's why I'm running for president in 4 years. It's going to be sex dolls, 3 years, sex dolls for everyone. And what they used to say, since you want to talk about old politics, I think Teddy Roosevelt was one of the people who said a chicken in every pot, meaning everyone eats. No one will be starving on my watch. And I will say everyone fucks. No one's going to be without pussy on my watch. I'm going to make sure pussy or prick, okay? Or asshole. I'm going to make sure everyone has a genitalia in everyone's home. You're all going to have it. But I mean, you can apply the same thing to video games and look at the couch potato that the TV created out of the human species, and then the video game potato, which is larger and softer and less than the couch. The couch potato had some strength. The video game players right now that are sitting in the basements and stuff like that are very pale, look very sickly, and are very small and soft, very soft. So I would imagine we're just you could say maybe devolve or evolve into a softer, kinder species, which would be a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll certainly support your 2028 presidential campaign.
I love it. Thank you.
I mean, I'll decline your offer, though, on the doll, but...
yeah, that is until you're alone.
No, I think I'll still decline.
I bet you wouldn't. I bet you wouldn't.
I'm too much of a Luddite.
As you play with a smartphone?
I barely know how to use my phone. But I think that would be great. And especially, I keep seeing all these like titles of like loneliness epidemics, and I'm like, yeah, I think AI will work. And then there's also a whole bunch of stories about how terrible it is that people are getting like addicted to like talking to chatbots. And like, I guess if it becomes counterproductive to that degree, especially like, I guess I can understand that people are in this day and age extremely lonely, and that sort of obsessive compulsion towards a thing which acknowledges you and seems like it's interacting with you without any issues and just on its own accord, regardless of the fact that you're the one programming it by continuing to talk to it and you're the one that's fueling it. You know, I think that, there is, I mean, it's, I think that, there is, I mean, it's, I think that, there is, 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 I think that, there on some form it's psychodrome. It's, it's the suspension of disbelief, even if it's unconscious.
Yeah, AI doesn't get programmed though, because it learns. AI has the ability to learn, so you're not just programming it. It can learn, which is the dangerous part of AI. It could find out how to hurt you, those dolls. So there's a reality of that kind of stuff, them being dysfunctional or interpreting things wrong. So it's a heavy concept. But
I don't
you can
know.
say you can say you're a luddite all you want. You could talk about loneliness all you want. The word loneliness sounds fun, but we're talking about chemicals and the need to be around people, the need to smell chemicals, the need to be around them is important for us as a species. So if someone's able to reproduce that, it's going to help you as a human being, just like a vitamin would. These are a different kind of vitamin. And so to say you don't need vitamins, you're just going to eat white bread. You don't need this because you're just a Luddite. You're wrong. Like you're going to need to eat some vegetables. You're going to need to take some vitamins. And so vitamin P, vitamin sex, whatever you want to call it, it's a vitamin that we need.
I guess so. I guess it just depends on individual factors in that area.
Well, no, it doesn't. We need this. It's like it doesn't depend on individual factors. You need water. I'm saying the human contact is like water. Sex is like water. We need it. We need it. And when we don't get it, we become really weird. People become very weird and angry and perverse. And so within the society we've built, we don't have an outlet to get it without being predatory, without paying for pussy or something like that, that's worse psychologically than having a robot. It'd be harder for me to go, here's $50 to someone. I need sex. I need to feel something, than it would be to have a robot doing something, because that other thing is really a suspension of belief, to pay someone to have sex with is the same thing. I mean, and you want to talk about suspension of belief. Love is that in general, I think. I mean, you don't know what's going on in the other person's head. You only know how that you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue. Maybe robot partners are safer because you actually know what's going on in their head. They're not using you. They're there to be a tool for you.
How do you know?
Well, because that's what that's what they're there for. To be a tool.
If they're learning though, then
because how do I know? Because that's why I put them in my home to be a tool for me. What they become or how they're used is I don't know. Right? I wouldn't know how. If I had a gun in here for self-protection, I don't know that someone wouldn't steal it and shoot me. Correct. But tools are tools. A saw is made to saw wood. How do I know? Because that's why it was made. Can it also do something else? Probably. That's where innovation comes in, and that's where we find out lead paint is no good for us. But the future holds, with new technology offers problems and cures. It's a constant. It's just a constant with that stuff. It's a yin and a yang. You're always gonna, you're gonna have these things like the robot sex dolls that will have problems or create a different psychological ideal or psychological profile in humanity. Edward Bernays, the greatest black magician ever, really fucked with people's DNA. I think he really changed how people think, period. Everyone thinks differently since Bernays put his touch on things. And so it's like, how do we know that was going to happen? We didn't. We had no clue. I think what he did was masterful, yet really damaging. Really damaged things. But I don't think he meant to damage things. I don't think he meant that.
No, but I'm kind of tracing it, and I'm finding a lot. I think that what he did with the cigarettes, humans, at least in a lot of Western culture, adapted to addiction and stuff with just the cigarettes. They just adapted to addiction, and it was there before. I'm not going to deny that, but I think he really set that adaptation in solid, and we're just I see that a lot because I do live now with my apartment that's kind of closer to more, I don't know the correct word for it here. I guess there are a lot. I have seen about 15 minutes from where I live quite a few people that just stand with their bodies jerking and not there, like I'm not there. I think that, I think Brené's.
Hello?
Fuck.
What?
Oh, it said my internet went out for a second. I don't know how much of that you heard.
You just said, I think Bernays.
I think Brené's. I think Brené's changed human genetics with. Excuse me if I'm repeating myself and you already heard this. I don't know how much you actually heard of that. Kind of went off on a tangent. But I think Edward Bernays changed human DNA, or he made humans adapt with the cigarette campaign, because I'm kind of trying to trace it, and I know there was like addiction and stuff before quite a bit, but after like looking at the rise of cigarettes and the expanded use of nicotine, I think humans kind of started adapting to become more addicted to things. Like, I think it's a genuine adaptation that happened, because it's now evident that addiction is a genetic trait. Like, if your grandparents were addicted to things, you're also likely to be addicted to things, even if, say, your parents aren't addicted to anything. Or
Yeah, well, what you just said cancels out what you just said, which is like genetically we're more in tune with addiction than we are. Bernays didn't do anything about addiction. You're using Bernays to springboard into a conversation about addiction. Bernays created just an impulsive consuming. Addiction is part of our, probably, like you said, in DNA, part of our species, and a byproduct of our society. Like you starve someone enough, they're probably going to have eating issues after they are no longer starved. They're probably going to have some weird eating fetishes, so those addictions are, if you went and saw a psychologist or a counselor, they'd be able to tell you why people are addicted, versus Bernays creating a system that helped people decide the way that he wanted them to decide. So he created propaganda to sell war. It was to sell. It was to tell you how to choose, to get you to choose his way. So marketing, propaganda, all that stuff is to get you to do my bidding without you knowing you're doing my bidding. It's just to get you to do something I want you to do. And he was able to get people to basically be impulsive on either buying a car or going to war or smoking cigarettes. But it didn't matter to him. It was just about getting you to do what he wanted, getting him to do whatever whoever's paying him wanted. But this conversation's going all over the place. We're talking about a lot here. Let's move away from Bernays right now and stuff, because this is an intense conversation. This is a different conversation. I'm going to go back to some of what I was going to ask you about real quick. So we talked about the future. I talked about Xena. Let's talk about that. What did you think of the Witch's Sabbath real quick?
I liked it. I was honestly kind of worried that I wouldn't like it, because I was genuinely kind of worried that a ton of people were going to show up, which, no offense, I'm glad that it was the size it was. Otherwise, I probably would not have liked it at all.
Why is that offensive to me?
Because I know the goal was to get people to show up and have a good time.
People did show up. Quite a few people showed up.
I just meant like a larger number of people.
How do you know how many people were there?
I think I counted at least 56 people passing in.
Did you say 50?
56.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a lot of people for a Wednesday. See, you don't have any knowledge about what's a lot of people or what's a little amount of people. And so it's like, that's funny to hear from you. Like, there wasn't a lot of people there. There actually was. It's El Paso, Texas on a Wednesday night. That's a crazy amount of people to show up to an event, especially a satanic event. It's a crazy amount of people to show up. It was Wednesday. That's true.
I guess I just had some preconceived notions based on the...
Right, but your preconceived notions are based on visuals. Again, a Bernays thing. Normally, like what I might do, if I'm saying, oh, their pre-sale tickets are at 30, 40, and I want it to look good for you or people, I care about you, care about people thinking what it's going to look like. I'm like, oh, let's go get a coffee shop. Let's go get a small place that can only sit 40 or 50 people and it looks sold out. And so you just downgrade it and then it looks packed because it is packed. We had a big venue. We had a big venue with a lot of room for vendors and stuff like that. So,
I mean, it filled the ritual room. So
well, I know what it did. It was, but you're presenting it in a way that's weird to me, especially on record. Like, well, I don't mean to be offensive, but there weren't a lot of people there. There actually were a lot of people there, especially for a Wednesday night in El Paso, Texas. Like, that's a crazy amount of people. There were more people there than there were at the fourth one that was in LA. So, it was a great amount of people.
Well, I'm happy to hear that there were more people there than in LA.
You have to put it into perspective too. Like, what are you comparing it to? Like, there is no comparison to it. What do you compare it to? A Marilyn Manson concert? That's not what this is.
No, I was going off of the stuff I saw from the first one, where there was like a ton of people.
Yeah, but that's Chicago on like a Saturday night or something like that.
That's true.
I
had preconceived notions about something that I had never experienced before, but I do think it was really cool, and I had I thought it was really cool. I really liked that ritual that Jess and what's her fate, I don't know the other person's name, did. I thought that was really cool.
Nice. So did I.
I think someone recorded that. I want to get a full copy of that recording. I think that was really cool.
I did too.
I liked the experience. I liked helping set it up and everything. I thought that was very interesting to do.
Yeah, I wish someone would have videotaped mine. There was a reason Jess opened and did that. We talked about that, and there was a reason my altar after that event, that ritual was my ritual. They're both mine, basically. Okay. But it's like they went together. They collaborated with me. So we talked about this and I asked them to do something in front of me like that. So that's basically all my stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like that. There's a reason that my altar was trans as well. The person that was laying down was trans. And so, so there was a reason why there was this trans ritual happening on the border town, on the border of Mexico and Texas. There was a point to the location for me. And the best part of that event was it was between a police station and a big Wells Fargo bank building. That was important to be between these sources of power. So it was a great location. Great location.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to video your ritual, but as soon as you walked out, my my phone storage instantly hit full, and I couldn't do anything else for the rest of the night with my phone.
Yeah, well, no one else got it either. No one got anything.
And in another sense, I kind of like that because
I don't.
You don't, but
no, why would I like that? Why would I like that about an event that I did?
Well, you wouldn't, because it's a piece of history missing. But I like it because in another sense, I think it adds more mystique that could probably make the next ones have more of a draw in for people, because there's this, I got an image of it and it's very interesting and leaves a lot open to like, what the fuck is actually going on here?
Right. I don't mind. I see what pissed me off about that isn't that there was no video of it, because I don't mind there being no video. But there was a professional photographer there, and they told him not to take pictures. And I was like, what the fuck's wrong with a picture, guy? Like, that's fucking dumb. Like, I'm like, that to have artistic pictures taken, that really pissed me off, because I was like, that's just like more bullshit I've got to deal with when I deal with people. Like, they get weird and they try to gatekeep me,
Yeah.
and I don't like that. But so there was a point to doing something with a group of Hispanic trans folks on the Mexican American border. For me, there was a reason I took it to El Paso, and that was the biggest part of it. The reason I was like, yeah, one of the biggest reasons I was like, I'm not doing this in Reno, was like, I asked the person, I said, can we make sure it's diverse? And that means trans folks, people of color, all that stuff. I want it to be diverse. So when it came, and it has to be 18 and over. And when it came down to it, it was not 18 and over. And then they were like, I'm like, so what about the diversity of it? And they're like, oh no, it's just, I know one band that has a Mexican in it. And I was just like, oh my God, this person's going on and on about being politically correct and all this kind of left-wing shit. Like, fuck you lazy fucking bum. I was like, fuck this. And so I'm just glad I jumped from that situation and went to something that was really cool. That was really a great thing. I think that El Paso thing was just amazing. And yeah, I like how you take things, though. You try to be positive about things. I remember when we were looking at the electrical wasn't on in the building in El Paso, the venue, and you're like, maybe it's for the best. And so I like how you, hold on. Let me finish what I'm saying. I like how you try to see things like, well, maybe this is for the best. Maybe this is for the best. That's a good way to do things, because that was, it was funny. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, did you see? I mean, you saw that wiring behind.
I sent a photo of it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was terrible. Like, I was like half sure the place was possibly going to burn down the entire night. Which, in all fairness, I was kind of like, at least like let the rituals happen, and then after that have it burn down and say that the rituals were so powerful that it burned down.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. We were laughing in your car at some point. I was saying Satan will get the blame. If it burns down, always Satan will get the blame. But I loved the event. I loved working with Jess, especially. I worked with them for the full week before we had the event. They do a lot of work, and that person is a really cool person. I love them. I think they're a very great artist, really great artist, and I think they're going to do a lot in the future. Jess was I was very impressed by that person, like I'm impressed with you. And so, yeah, they were cool. And that ritual was very cool. And I was very honored that they were able to do it. And I was able to talk them into it. And they were like trying to figure out how they were doing it. I'm like, here's what I do. I pre-record my shit. I do this, and this. And like, you pre-record? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, I'm doing this now. And I'm like, why? And they go, because if I could pre-record it, I can do it. I'm like, right. Makes it way easier. Just pre-record the shit and go out. So it was great. Yeah, I loved it. And I thought my ritual came off well.
Yeah, I thought yours was great as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I thought it came out well. I loved that the 4 people that helped with it, the 4 that were on the floor.
Oh, the ones that were in the hoods.
Yeah, they were yelling.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty cool.
They were throwing things at people. They were yelling at them. I told them, we were in the back room, like, what do we do? I go, you do what you do everything that's going to get you off. I mean, you want to yell at someone, you should start yelling at their face. How dare, just yell at them. Whatever you don't like white men, you see a white man and tell them you hate white men. You don't like women, you yell at them. You yell, you say things to them, you say dirty things to them, you want to suck their dick. You say, you just do this. And they were doing it. I was loving that. And one came out without their top on. Like I tell them my hoods were made for nudity, topless, but you do what you want. And so two of them came out topless and two of them did not. And the two that did come out topless was like their partner was like, they would never do that. I was so shocked. They're so conservative. They don't ever show nudity. They came out naked. I was like, I love that part of it. It was great. And everyone that did the ritual with me, like my altar, Anna Yee, they loved it. They had a great time. I loved it. I love shoving money in people's faces, shredded money. It was great. I couldn't believe I shoved a whole handful of money in someone's mouth. Like fucking smashed, shredded money in their mouth. They had to spit it out all over the place. It was great.
Yeah, I saw that. I was laughing hysterically when I saw that.
What happened when I walked away from them? Were they spitting it out and everything?
Yeah, that person spent about a minute and a half spitting it out.
Oh, I bet. I love that.
It was pretty funny to watch.
Yeah.
Person, if you're listening to this, you were hilarious to watch spit money out.
Yeah, you were great sport. It was great. That was fun time in El Paso. I love El Paso. So, okay. So I just wanted to wonder what you thought about Witch Sabbath. And, oh, fuck. I have a great, I have to save this for next. Well,
no, ask it now. No.
All right. Tell me more about me. Pretend you're an AI and the prompt is, and I didn't write the prompt, but just pretend there's a cool prompt here. Like, tell me more about Shane Bugbee. Tell me more about me. What do you know about me that I don't know?
Well, I can't say what I know about you that I don't know about, that you don't know about you. That usually just comes up on its own.
Well, let me see the prompt. Let me see the prompt will be, tell me about Shane Bugbee as the Shane Bugbee historian. What kind of person is he and why is he interesting?
Well, I don't think anyone's really been involved in so much. It's it's kind of like when you find it's one of those interesting hidden influences and everything. I mean, you're just kind of everywhere. Like if you keep looking, you'll find you, like Milwaukee Metal Fest, and then you look at all these concerts and like Lollapalooza you see now, Coachella, that stuff, like the direct influence, especially along with Expo of the Extreme. Then if you look through, zine history, you find your involvement in your zines, Naked Aggression, and then, doing, keeping things in publish and print while, the creators on this first in history trial for obscenity and stuff. And then, also, doing all these, in a sense, first, but also last interviews with people, almost like, it's almost kind of like I don't want to say it seemed like a death curse at first, but it's like weird. All these interviews are the last, and they die after. So do I really want to talk to this person? Should I be talking to you right now, Shane? Am I gonna crash my car after this?
I would hope not. There's nothing but
ritual that killed Shane Mansfield. I can only assume.
There's nothing going on there. No, you're not gonna crash your car. You're gonna get everywhere you want to go in life.
All right, good to know.
All right, here. That's good to hear. So now here's the thing, and answer like as short as you can. Doesn't matter, but this is like the best and worst thing about Anton LaVey.
The best thing about Anton LaVey was, I think he is the only person that could actually wear that red devil costume and not look ridiculous. The worst thing, I would say, is I really think that he popularized the goatee, and I think a lot of people have goatees that shouldn't have goatees. Just strictly influence-wise. But at the same time, I think I really like him because he had a lot of ideas and just general insight that it's hard to say whether it's influence or just already there, because I look through it, and a lot of what I like and everything, just looking through the past, is like influenced. Like, I can just see the direct influence from Anton LaVey. Like, I don't think punk would have happened if Anton LaVey didn't exist. And I got into, like punk music and all that stuff, and that's how I got into everything. I think I love the influence, and I like seeing the reverberation. But on another hand, it's like sometimes that influence falls short because, as great as he was, he didn't really fight to keep like those sources open until really you came along with Might Is Right and stuff. That's when a lot of those sources really started opening up, only 30 years after the fact, which, while he was open about them, it wasn't like in some sort of grandstanding way. Like, for all it's worth, you can mention Might Is Right, like to Ragnar Redbeard, whose Might Is Right like was in the original dedication page of the Satanic Bible in the first printings, but they took that out. And then, outside of that, where was Might Is Right aside from Loom Panics, and scarce copies here and there.
Oh yeah, but I think, but that's also like gatekeeping. That kind of stuff is a generational thing. I don't think you're going to understand that from that perspective unless you studied a little, like the idea of that. Like you gatekeep a lot of stuff. Even when I was publishing, you didn't tell people a lot of stuff because you had to keep, that was just because it was your, what do they call it? Your intellectual material. It was what you earned. So if people wanted to know something, they needed to pay you. You learned it. They need to pay you. And so that's part of that. Like you said, he put Might Is Right in the first printing, knowing it was a real hard to find book. But, and I think this was just different times, but I'm not saying that he wouldn't gatekeep stuff. I'm just saying it was different times. So I think present day, he wouldn't gatekeep stuff because it's because present times is more, put it on archive.org, open up, and I think he would have possibly done that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Not me.
I can't really say I like or dislike him. I find him interesting. I don't see him as someone to be, lifted on a pedestal, but at the same time, he does have that great influence and in a certain sense should be, but at the same time, I don't think that I don't know. I think he was just a person doing his thing, and that holds reverence, yeah, but I don't really want to like deify that. And I see so many people, and I really hate this. Trend of going to where I don't hate it. I guess I get it in some sense, but there's this trend of people going to where the Black House was, and trying to and people that are like, oh, so sad that it's gone. And I'm like, it was his house. It's not your house. Get your own fucking house. Make your own Black House. Make it pink. In fact, I don't want to see another Black House. Make a pink house.
I'm listening. Oh, I thought I had it on mute. I was coming to unmute it. I'm making coffee as well. Well, yeah, I like going. I think there's something when people are drawn to old locations like that, that sort of to me proves magic, proves there's stuff that we don't have words for yet. Because there's energy. There's some sort of energy we're attracted to. We want to be there. Why? Like, it's just concrete. It's just another house. There's nothing even there from him. But why? Why do we want to stand there? Why? You know,
I,
and one of the best things I love on the internet, one of the greatest things I love on the internet, these things that are my guilty pleasures, when people will take pictures of movie locations now, like they'll go take a picture of whatever the street, and then they'll take, you know, like where E.T. was filmed, the movie, whatever, where whatever movies were filmed. They'll take pictures of the locations and then they'll post them with the old locations, and you'll see buildings missing, but you'll see some buildings still there. And I just love that shit. And I love traveling to spots where things have happened or people have lived. Like I remember driving by Hunter S. Thompson's house just because we were near it. I love all that shit. I love seeing where people are from. I've been in Elvis's childhood home. It was neat to walk in and go, wow, this is where Elvis lived. This is what he touched. This is how he grew up in this small little place. So there's something attractive about that stuff to me. You know, that's
yeah, I agree, and I do like that as well, what you're saying. But my thing is it seems like almost like it seems to be like people, at least from what I've noticed and what I've seen, it seems to be like a rite of passage sort of pilgrimage, and I'm like, I don't know, that just doesn't make sense to me from what I see in that.
Well, it's sort of funny, you know. I get you, but it's you know, just thinking about it as you're talking, it's sort of funny how, you know, like you could say, I don't want a monument. I want my ashes thrown to the sea, and I don't want anyone. I don't want a gravestone. I don't want to be buried. I don't want a tree. I don't want anyone coming to any space to worship me, and then people doing it anyway. You know, it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, and I think you, me, and Jess were talking about this when we were at Denny's, about how, you know, people were apparently asking them to like burn all their art and stuff when they died because they didn't want to be commodified.
Yeah, it's, well, they didn't want what I was saying is they wanted when I was talking about that, was someone wanted their work destroyed because they wanted to have a choice as to what was presented as art. And some of their stuff just wasn't good enough for them. Like if they're working on 10 paintings and they're unfinished, they don't want people to see their unfinished work. They wanted to see it, you know, dressed and ready. And so it was just like what they decide to present, but they don't get the choice in it anyway. What they wanted didn't matter. And it's sort of like, it's wild. It's just like art in general. Just because I interpret it one way doesn't mean you're going to, when you read it or paint, or, you know, absorb it, or, you're gonna see it the way you're gonna see it. You're gonna interpret it the way you're gonna interpret it. I've gotten grief in my life for people that interpret stuff I've done in a way that I'm like, I have never even thought that way. You're the one thinking that way. Like you were talking about earlier about us talking, and you were young, you know, you and David talking to me, and someone was giving you grief. I forget who. Oh, that Robert guy. And it's like, well, I've never even thought that way, actually. So it's like, I don't have a guilty bone in my body, and I have to consider that maybe you're projecting, because it's like, you know, it doesn't matter what you think, because I don't think that way, and I've done nothing wrong, you know. So you can accuse me of thinking that way all you want, but it's sort of laughable to me.
Worst thing you did was let 2 16-year-olds work on a book.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. That's a bad news already. Making books are, people hate people that make books a lot of times. They burn books. Books have a life of their own already. So it's like, you know, but what I've noticed as an artist is people are always mad at people when you're doing something. They always want to bring you down to their level. Crab pat mentality reigns supreme with humanity. If you're trying to get out of a hole, they're going to try to drag you back in. And it's just,
Robert's just mad that it wasn't the actual Church of Satan that caused the Satanic Temple to go under.
Well, he can be mad at whatever he wants. He can be mad at it whatever he wants. He's not me. You know, the fact is that he's not a person that LaVey gave authority to speak for Satanism. Okay? That's the fact. And he should shut the fuck up. That's what I get to say to him. Shut the fuck up, bitch. You don't have that. I have that. Very few people on the earth have that. Very few people on the earth have that. So when you talk about LaVey, like I love the guy. I think he's a great guy. And I met him personally. I thought he was a great guy when I met him. And I just love him. And I love the opportunities he gave to me while he was alive. And so, you know, I consider the source when people talk. Robert could talk, Robert wishes he was me. And most people do that are against me. They wish they were me. They wish they lived my life. I've done a lot of shit. And I don't feel like stopping. I feel like still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Robert can say all he wants, but every sort of, online Satanism stuff, a lot of it stems from what you were doing. So what he has is a result of you.
Oh yeah. And that's well, yeah, and it's whatever. He can be this dog for someone else. I don't care.
Well, credit where credit's due. I'm just using examples for.
It's true. Well, it's true. You're just being true. It's true, and I just that's what gives me satisfaction. I'm satisfied in my life, though. I'm okay with he can. I don't care about people like that just because of my accomplishments. The same reason that like my tangible results is what makes me satanic. Let's say makes me valid, makes me alive, makes me know that I'm here. Makes you know that I'm here. I'm alive. People see my shit, and so it's like. I've got tangible results. I don't know. What do you got? What do you got, dude? What do you got? I got real tangible results, big deal tangible results. So, yeah, well, and I wouldn't say the COS didn't knock down the Satanic Temple because, I'm Anton's friend. And I think what did in that book bring them down was the first couple of pages where it's like Anton LaVey talks about who has the authority to speak for his religion, and his priests are flawless. And when they speak, all that kind of shit, they're hit, that quote, that little part in that book right before the interview with me where I talk about meeting LaVey is essential in setting the tone for who these idiots are and where do they get their authority. That question alone, like where do they get this authority to speak for this? It makes it like, it has to come back to me, and then it has to go to LaVey, and then if you're going to drag me like Doug and Kevin were spending years dragging me and trying to make me look bad. I mean, how's that make you look now? That everything you have comes from a guy that you made fun of mercilessly, tried to destroy. It makes them look awful. I mean, to anyone who would want to work with those people, they have no integrity. And most people with integrity or most people with a mind would be like, man, I don't know if I really want to work with people who would treat someone like that. Someone who gave them everything. That's a real rotten thing to do.
Yeah.
And I would have rather spent those years that we were. I really loved working with you on stuff. So it's cool. This is a bonus that I get out of that stuff is I got to meet you and work with you on something and meet new people. But the last thing I wanted to work on was a book about Satanism. It's not what I wanted to do. But here we are.
Yeah. Here we are.
And it's like, like I feel like I'm entering my Buddhist stage of Satanism. Like I said, I'm moving into Buddhism. I'm glad you're going to take over the Satanic Almanac.
Yeah. Though, personally, I'm trying to keep that more on the down low as of right now.
Oh, whatever.
I really want to make it like I know it's like idealistic, but I really think that I should keep it more hushed because I don't want to do too much, I guess, mental masturbation about it. Because I really think with what I have in mind, it could really, I don't know, I guess kind of make, it could really punch a hole in a lot of conversation around Satanism and start something.
That's a good goal. Yeah, but I don't think there is any kind of we're a pretty transparent society right now, so it's hard to be on the down low. But good luck.
I think a secret can be kept.
Yeah. Okay. As we just recorded that.
I mean, I gave away minimal information. I just said the goal of it. I didn't say the contents. I didn't say anything except that what I wanted to make the Satanic Almanac to be.
I love it. So how are we wrapping this conversation up?
I'm not sure. It's your conversation.
Well, it's our conversation. It's a conversation. That's the fact. There's two people here. I'm not talking to myself. So let's just. I'm good. It's been 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'm running out of steam. I'm not going to sound good anymore.
All right.
But this was a good long conversation. I know you're going to send me this audio right away, right?
Yep, as soon as I can, which is as soon as I get off of this.
Okay.
I'm going to end record.
Anything else to talk about, to touch on real quick?
Not that I can think of right now, but I'm sure as soon as we got off, I'll start thinking of all sorts of things as I'm listening through it again.
Exactly. All right, homie. Peace out. It was good talking with you.
Yeah, I had fun.
This is great. Let's do this. Let's do this kind of conversation again. Let's try to do this at least once a month, yo. Come on now.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, the other one was in April, about the same time, something like that, right? Oh, it was April 30th. That conversation was nice. So we're doing it about once a month.
Well, actually, it was 2 a.m. on May 1st, but.
Yeah, well, my phone says April 30th because it was probably in Chicago time, but it says that recording was April 30th, actually. So, recorder, let me go to my thing, and it says